Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining today. At Communitech, we're working hard to bring you business as virtual as much as possible while also supporting our members the best we can. Before we kick things off, I would first like to take a moment to thank all of our courageous frontline workers for everything they are doing for our community right now. Good afternoon and welcome to today's session. My name is Christina Wood, Director of Start and Scale Programs at Communitech, and I'm thrilled to have PJ Lowe-Silivestru join us today for a look at how to stay connected while working remotely. Before I turn it over to PJ, I just have a few housekeeping items that I'd like to share. So just a reminder that the session is being recorded so that it can be shared at a later date for companies to refer back to. You can find all of our Ask Me Anything sessions on communitech.ca on our Tech Talks page. So every week we post the sessions there. You may also want to minimize your speaker view on the right-hand side of your screen in order to view PJ's full slide deck or move it around where appropriate. I also ask that you keep your microphone on mute during the session and please use the chat functionality to ask any questions that you have. PJ welcomes questions throughout the session, so please don't feel like you need to wait until the end to ask your question. We can definitely interject and have a bit of a group discussion. If you're interested in following up with PJ directly on any of these topics following the session, you can connect with your Communitech advisor or CSM, and they will put you in contact with PJ. Also, feel free to connect with her on LinkedIn. If you require closed captioning for today's session, please click the live indicator on the top left corner of your screen, and you can click View Stream there, and live transcript will be available in a second browser window. Mackenzie has also put it in the chat. You can click the link there as well if that's easier for you. And lastly, Communitech is running Ask Me Anything sessions every Tuesday at 2 p.m. So you'll see on the slide here a few of our upcoming sessions, so make sure to tune in for some of those. So thanks again for joining today. And with that, I will turn it over to PJ to share her screen and get started.
Thank you very much for taking time today to come and listen to me speak. And like Christina said, this is an Ask Me Anything session. So feel free to put any questions that you have in the chat and she will bring it to my attention. You don't have to wait until the end. Just so you know, the agenda for today, I'm going to take a look at 4 different topics that I think would be relevant during the COVID pandemic right now and with remote working moving forward. So we're going to talk about some COVID issues, some tools to stay connected, remembering mental health and wellness, and then if we have some time at the end, we'll talk about some opportunities and challenges of remote work. So I have been a growth coach at Communitech for just over 2 years now, and I was a mentor before that, and I'm on my 4th startup, so I'm a serial entrepreneur, so I kind of know what it's like to start a company and run a company and have different challenges that have come up like this COVID pandemic that we're dealing with right now. So I've probably been in a lot of your shoes, so I'm hoping that this talk will kind of help you and help with some of the things that I have found work best in the past couple of years with me and my companies, and hopefully it will help with yours. So we'll just move right into the first section, which is some COVID issues. Perfect. So the first thing I wanted to take a look at is the difference between remote working and then working from home due to a pandemic, because they're very different. And I think that some people have the myth of a remote working space being the exact same during a pandemic. Then we'll go into take a look at some of the ways you can stay connected to the employees that you've had to let go for a time being. And then we'll move into some of the new landscapes in regards to remote working. So the first one is, like I mentioned, there is a big difference between remote working and working from home with a pandemic. So I think that a lot of employers have this myth that, here is your employee and he's working or she's working from home and they have their home office set up and it's nice and quiet and there's no disturbances and they have their laptop and their coffee and they're going to be optics, sorry, 100%, just like they would in the office. But the reality of that is quite different, and it looks more like this, where you have kids that are staying home from school, and even though we're moving into phase 2 and 3, camps aren't going to be happening this summer. So it's quite different than when you have a remote worker and they're hired as a remote worker, and there's certain expectations that are set up with that. We've shifted from, everybody has just transitioned from working inside your office space to now inside wherever they can build an office space inside their home, and it's very, very different. And so you're finding that going into this next phase 2 and 3, that a lot of people won't be going back to the office or going back the way that they did before. So remote working is going to be staying in effect for the next time being. So we need to kind of realize that it's a different scenario. So when you've had to let go of all of these people because of the issues with the pandemic, it's not like you let go of people because of performance issues or something that was happening with the company. Everybody's in the same boat, and whether you've had to let go of 5 people or 30 people, depending on the size of your company, it's really important to maintain that connection with those employees. You brought those employees into your company for a reason, because you had trust in them and you felt that they were a part of your team. So just because they're gone right now, you want to keep that connection with them. So there's 3 different ways that I find best to do this for these employees. And the first is through a company related emails or updates. And this can be done weekly or bi-weekly, and it kind of allows you to let those employees know what's happening with the government right now, what things are opening, how that affects your company, and will you be reopening because of these changes, or rehiring, and when that's going to happen. And it kind of just gives them an update. The second way that I find it really important is to kind of have that personal check-in. It's almost like a wellness check-in, and you just want to say to them, like, hey, how is everything going? Maybe help them out if they're having problems, like doing the paperwork for unemployment, or finding some great job postings right now in sites that they can find employment for the time being, or if you're unable to hire them back after. And it kind of just gives them that sense of almost like company goodwill that you're giving them, because like I said before, you brought them in and you cared enough to hire them, so you should care enough to help them when the company can no longer have them as an employee. And then I think the last one that I wanted to quickly touch base with, which is I'm finding from the companies that I'm talking to, the most important is helping those employees that you've had to lay off facilitate a way for them to connect with other employees. And so whether that's just the 30 that you've had to let go and they're in like a chat group, or it's still connection with some of the employees that are still working there, it will help them connect and keep the friendships and help each other with questions. So if somebody saw a job posting for a certain company but they don't know anything about that company, they can just put a quick text, hey, I saw this posting, does anybody know about this? And then they can help each other out, and it's a really good way for them to feel connected toward one another but still remain connected to the company. So I found that a lot of people have been doing that, whether it's just like a Slack channel and they're still involved, or it's like a weekly or bi-weekly email that has everybody connected on it, and they can choose to opt in or out for that connection. So the last thing I wanted to talk about when dealing with the new landscape that we're dealing with working remote, because once again, it's not just having remote workers. A lot of companies still have remote workers. Like you could be based in Waterloo, but you have a small team in England. This is completely different because you've switched your whole team that's used to working in an office setting to a remote setting. So what you really want to make clear is you want to set expectations. You want to make sure that your employees understand the scope of what's happening with inside the company. So what your employees should really expect from you and what you should expect from them going forward, so that they can perform at an optimum level. And sometimes that's like helping them understand the new staff changes and reporting structure. Like I mentioned in the slide before, some people have had to let other people go, right? So it's very important to be clear with your employees about what's exactly happening in the company, and if layoffs have had to happen, and what the new reporting structure will be, and look future to. So it's really important for them to understand that, and it's really important for you to be able to help them move into those new procedures. It's very hard sometimes when you have a full team of people and they're used to working in an office setting to now work from home. Now their office could be their kitchen table, or it could be, the spare bedroom or one of the kids' rooms during the day. And sometimes it's hard to segment your day up into sections that will be most productive for them. So there are lots of tools out there and methods that you can help them kind of structure that new workday for them. I don't know if anybody's heard of the Pomodoro method, but it's a really good one. And I kind of reminds me of like when my kids were in high school, and basically you take your workday and you divide it into like 25-minute sections or 45-minute sections, and you pick a task and you do something for 25 to 45 minutes, and then you take a break. And you have like that transition period from like from homeroom to your first class, right? You walk the halls, you go to the bathroom, you have a drink of water. It's the same at work. So you do your first section at work, then you take a break and you go get a coffee, or you pet the dog, or you go throw a load of laundry in, because realistically speaking, you are working from home and life is completely different now. And you shouldn't feel guilty working from home and taking that extra 5 minutes to switch the laundry over, because you're being as productive as possible during that 25 and 45 minutes that you were working before. And so it kind of gives a little bit of a help for those employees that aren't used to having that structure. And you have to remember that when they were at the office, they would walk to go get a coffee or the water cooler and say hi to a few people. And it was really good for them to do that. So it's good for them to take that time throughout the day here. Another one that you should that I should mention is, with these new procedures and changes, the employees' work environment is completely different, and you have to let them know that it's okay that it's different, and you understand that. You understand they have children at home, or you understand that that they're working in a different environment that they're not used to, and help them by getting them some of the methods and tools that will make it more comfortable for them. Christina and I were just talking about right before we started this call, that what happens if your dog, starts barking because the mailman came, or you're expecting a UPS letter, but you are in a sales meeting, or you're a client success person and you're on the phone all day? Well, there's tools like Crisp. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, that you can download, and it will literally take all of the background noise out of any of your phone calls, so that it won't disrupt your phone call with your sales, but it will also help your employees stay focused on the task at hand. So. The last point I wanted to mention in the landscape is missed opportunities. I had a client that I was talking to a couple weeks ago, and they didn't necessarily want to change, like to let anybody go, but they had to do a few layoffs, and then they were noticing that some of the people in their team weren't 100% utilized. But most people won't put up their hand because they're in fear of losing their job, to say, because everything has shifted in the past 3 months, I'm only being utilized 60% of the time, and there's 40% of the time where I'm not really being used, but I would like to be used. So it's really important to create that environment so that they feel comfortable stating that they are not being utilized. And therefore you can switch these people's roles, even if it's short term, just in this transition from in the office to remote working, or if it ends up being long term, because that position is no longer available in your company anymore, but you don't want to necessarily lose that value person that you've hired and trained and have built that relationship with. So you can kind of move them around within a company. So take a look at, you know, who's being utilized, who is in over their heads because of this new role change, that their job has now changed so much that they can't keep up with what they were doing before and they need that help. And so you want to kind of match people up and take advantage of some missed opportunities. So the next slide that I have, we're going to talk about, the next section is tools to stay connected to your employees while being remote, because you're not in the office every day. So we do take for granted the fact that you walk around and you say hi to everybody and you go to the lunchroom and talk. You don't get those little tiny bits of face-to-face or even just a nod. So it's really important to figure out how to stay connected. So feel free in the chat in the next like 2 or 3 slides that I'm talking about to put down some of your favorite remote tools that you've been working with or that work for you guys to share, because it could help somebody else out there that that doesn't know about one of them. And I'm not going to mention all of them, I'm sure. So so to begin, I know everybody knows Zoom and Hangouts and Teams and whatever your company uses. My one thing I want to say about video is try to have video mandatory at least once a week. It doesn't have to be all the time. And I know that not everybody likes to be in the video. They'll click the video off button. So you just get their nice little avatar that looks perfect. But it really allows for accountability with inside the company, and it gives it that personal touch. And it's really important. I think it's really important for the teams to see that. And there's a ton of tools out there that will help you like be actual remote working. Like there's Proof Hub, there's Basecamp, there's a ton of them, Crisp that I already talked about. And depends if it's your sales team or your dev team or what marketing team, each tool will be different. And take advantage of asking your employees right now what they use. Like if they use any tools themselves that they think that would be really good for the team now that you are remote, it's best to get something that has been tried and used by some other team member, or maybe with their spouse uses it with their company, because it's the best kind of way to feel out the tools and see which ones will work best for that team. Because remember, the tools that you have in place, they won't necessarily solve the problem if they're not being used properly. So obviously the tool is just as good as the user. So if the users aren't going to use it, then you're going to waste a lot of time and effort trying to implement them, and possibly a lot of money. So just make sure that everybody's on the same page, but try to be creative about it and try to use new concepts and tools. So one of the tools that I had that I've used in the past too is the 6 thinking hats. And this isn't necessarily a tool that that is through technology, but it can be used that way. So I'm finding that everybody is having a ton of Zoom meetings or Hangout meetings, and it's sometimes meeting after meeting after meeting with whatever group you're talking about, and this dev team and this client meeting. And sometimes people are kind of getting meetinged out and talked out, and they don't actually want to participate in the meetings anymore, or they don't understand the situation because they're sitting in on a meeting. So sometimes doing something fun and creative, like using the 6 thinking hats, can take people that normally are shy and in their shell and bring them out and let them be more creative, or like be more defensive, without hurting anybody's feelings. So the 6 thinking hats is basically everybody wears a different color hat that day. And if you have a team meeting of like 50, like you can have 5 people wearing the black hat, which is, the cautious hat, and, tries to bring out, the negative problems in the scenario that you guys are talking about that day. And it's kind of fun and an easy way for, to break kind of the, to break the silence when people aren't going to start participating. And you'll see that when some people are going to just start getting over Zoomed, kind of. You'll see that everywhere now. So the next section that I want to talk about, and this is like my favorite part and passion section, and that is the connections that you're going to have to keep with your remote employees. And it's a little bit harder because you're all remote now, but it's even more important that you keep that personal touch when you are remote. And I've broken this down to 3 different ways to do this that I feel are really important. And the first is the company. And you need to keep that overall company personal touch. And Communitech does this in a really fun way. And they do a news at noon email. And in the email, every employee gets it around noon. And it has tidbits of what's happening with the company. And then it also has tidbits of what's happening with the government at that time. And then there's always a personal like well-being section, like don't forget to take a walk around the block every once in a while, or don't wear your pajamas every day when you're working remote. And it's just a great way for everybody to kind of get the same email, know what's happening with the company, and stay connected. So I find that it really works. Other things that you can do that I find really work to kind of keep that personal touch, because not everything has to be and needs to be work related when it comes to remote workers. Because when we're in the company and we're all sitting in an office or a 5-story building, we're not working 24/7 or the 8 hours a day. You are trying to keep that connection to your employees fun and personable. So I put geocaching down here, and I don't know if any of you guys know what geocaching is, but I know a company that did this, and it worked really well for them, and it was really fun. And not everything, it shows that not everything has to be expensive. And if you're a company of 2 versus a company of 200 or 2,000, this works because it works for every age. You can have employees that have little kids at home, and they can go out and do it after the school that we have set up in our homes right now. Or if you have somebody with a dog and they're single and they can take their dog out. But basically geocaching, it's kind of like a huge worldwide scavenger hunt. And there's a website, geocaching.com, and I believe there's like over 4,000 of them just alone in like Kitchener-Waterloo. But what this company did is they created a few of their own geocaches within the Kitchener-Waterloo area, and then gave those like longitude and latitude areas for each employee to go and find. And so your employees can go and do it whenever they want to do it. And then they go and they find this location. It's usually in a park or a trail or somewhere fun and outside and exciting. And it's hidden. So you find that location, then you still have to find what the geocache is, which could be as small as like a screw. It could be as big as a Tupperware container, and inside of it is usually a logbook that people can write down their name and the date that they found the geocache. So it's kind of fun for if you have one for a company that you see all the other employees that have actually found it, and you're like, oh yeah, Susan, I saw that you found the geocache last week. I found it yesterday. And then inside the geocache, this company, what they did is they actually put company like swag, or they put buttons and they put stickers inside of it. So when their employees found that geocache, they got to take a button or they got to take a sticker to put on their laptop or whatever. And it was just a fun way to keep that personal touch with the company, but in a fun way. And this one it's not super expensive. Yes, you need to have somebody go out there and physically create the geocache and put things, in the forest and update it every once in a while and add new things to it. But you'll see the connections that your employees will make and talk about it at the Zoom meetings and stuff like that. It's really fun to see. So the next one is teams. So obviously you're going to be having one-on-ones with teams and your daily stand-ups, whether it's your dev team or you're just the management team. And it's really important to have those and to touch base and to have time for everybody to talk about what's happening for the day. But remember that you need to have some personal touches with those team meetings as well. And it's not like you can do the team lunches or Taco Tuesdays anymore because restaurants aren't open. But there's more creative ways that you can do it that will keep that personal touch while they're remote. So I've got 2 examples. I have a company that they're only 32 people. I shouldn't say only, but they're 32 people. So it's not a huge amount of people. But what they do is they pick a food or a restaurant once a week, and they have a team lunch, and their HR person or their success person goes out and picks up all the lunches, and like, so if it's a sub week, so they go and they pick up all the subs, and then they actually deliver them to each employee's house between 10 and 12 on that Friday. And then at 12 o'clock, they all do like a Zoom lunch, and they just have their lunch like while everybody is just chatting and talking, but they're all having it from the same restaurant. So it's kind of fun. The other thing that I think is really fun to do, and it doesn't have to be a big budget thing as well, but like a cooking class. So a lot of teams that I know 3 of them that are actually doing this now, and they love it. But you basically pick something that you want to make, like empanadas 1 week, whatever, and the whole team gets the ingredients list of what it is that they need to either go out and purchase. I know some companies are actually sending the ingredients home, or like via Instacart or something like that, and it shows up at your door like that morning. And then everybody on Zoom does like a cooking class, and you cook whatever those empanadas are together while you're in this Zoom meeting, and then you all have lunch together. So there's different ways that you can do it, from like a no budget way, but it's still personable, to, you know, if you wanted to have it catered and have the, you know, the company pay for it. So not everything has to be done on a huge scale, and not everything has to be done on a huge financial scale, but it makes a big impact to those teams to create those friendships and you know, moments that you kind of have when you go for a team lunch, you know, once a month or something. The last part of this section I'm going to talk about is actual employee interactions that are keeping those personal touches. So I won't go into a lot of them, because you've all seen, you know, the water cooler, you know, the yoga classes that you can do online with your teammates, you know, book reviews that you can do. And there's a ton of them that everybody is doing right now. And I think it's fantastic. And I really like the fact that a lot of companies are just having like a hangout time, like between like whatever, you know, 1 and 4 o'clock, and you can just like drop in and say hi to somebody, but it's just always open, like a video that's just always open. And I think that's really good for people. But some of the 2 that I really want to discuss right now are like donut dates and visibility buddy. And I don't know if you guys have ever heard of donut dates, but it's a great way for teams, especially remote, that have a huge company of like 200, but still it's fun if it's only 10 people. But basically what they do is they match 2 people up in a company randomly, and you kind of go for like a donut date. So you have like a 5 to 15 minute date with that person to kind of just get to know them. And it's a way for your employees to kind of meet new people in the company that they wouldn't necessarily hang out with. Because if you're in the marketing team, you might not necessarily know everybody else in a company that's, you know, say, you know, in the sales section. So it's kind of a great way for people to just touch base and get to know one another. The other one that I really like is visibility buddies. So visibility buddy allows your employees to have somebody just to talk to about projects that they're working on, or something that's happening with the company. And it's a great way for people to give shout outs, whether it's on Slack or whatever mode you guys use, because you won't necessarily pat yourself on the back all the time. But if you have a visibility buddy and you just closed a deal you've been working on like for 3 weeks right now, it's great for that person to say, hey, did you guys know that John's been working on this deal and he finally closed it? Or anything that relates to something at work. And it's really nice to see other people acknowledging their coworkers' accomplishments, and, you know, building those friendships from within. So I really like those 2. Another really good one that I just talking to a customer the other day, and they did online board games, and they went, and at like 4 o'clock on Friday, they said, okay, everybody, we're going to go. And they played code names, and they went online and they just played board games for an hour with their small team. And it was really good because you get to interact with your team members on a personal level, that you get to know everybody like outside of the office kind of way that you wouldn't normally get to know somebody. So there's tons of ways that you can keep that personal touch. It's just be creative. So I don't know, Christina, if anybody actually like wrote down any connections that they have. But if if you guys have anything really cool that you're doing, like donut dates or geocaching or something that could benefit somebody else, feel free to put it down, because I always love learning new things that people can do.
PJ, we just had one from Susan, and it was on the online board games. So she had written
You know,
that before you actually mentioned it.
yeah. I think she was the one that I was talking to, and she's like, yeah, we went and played board games. I'm like, that's fabulous. I think that's a great thing to do. So I know my son's always playing video games in the basement with his friends, and I can hear him, and I'm like, who are you talking to down there? And he's like, oh, I'm playing with Logan. I'm playing with this person and this person. I'm like, that's fantastic, because when we're all remote right now, and obviously, safe distancing, it's a great way for people to, interact. So why not use it in a work situation as well? So.
I know at Communitech, we're also encouraging employees cross teams to connect with one another, where you normally wouldn't be on a virtual meeting with them throughout your week, but at the office you would have crossed paths with them in the hallway or whatever. And so encouraging people to reach out to people beyond their own teams as they're not seeing them is another great way. And then also using icebreakers as part of our daily check-ins. So, the first part of the meeting is kind of reserved for how did your deck building go this past weekend and that kind of thing. And, incorporating would you rather questions, or where's the first restaurant you want to go to once things open up? And
I love that one.
Incorporating some of those questions and just hearing, from different members of the team. So.
That's perfect. I love those. So feel free to keep having them stroll in. So the last one I'm going to kind of touch base with, and not 100%, because I know that there's a really good AMA talk that Chris Mulhall did on May the 5th about basically the new landscape of interviewing, hiring, and onboarding new employees, because it's completely different now that we're remote. So I urge you to go to the Tech Talks page for that and listen to his AMA if you are really interested in that. But I wanted to just make two mentions when it comes to onboarding team members and team meetings when you're remote. And I brought up this Instagram post from Smile.io, and it says on here, adding 2 members to the team on Monday, we're ready to deck them out. And I think it's really important, because gone are the days that you walk around the office with a new employee and you get to show them, this is the lunchroom and the bathrooms, and you walk around and you introduce them to everybody in the company, and they don't have that anymore, and they especially don't have that with remote. So things like this Instagram post is amazing, because I can guarantee you that if you hired somebody last week and they're starting on Monday, they're following you on Instagram and Facebook, and they're going to see this post, and they're probably just as excited as this post that states that they're excited to have them come, that they are excited to start work on Monday. And when they see this, they'll already feel a connection to the company. And I love that this post shows all this swag. And if you know me, I'm a big swag person, only if the swag is good and if it's done in the right way. So I'm not a believer in giving swag for birthdays at all, or special moments, but I love the fact that Smile.io is showing you that when you're going to come to the company, we have all this wonderful swag for you. And right now, as remote working, and even for teams that are remote working and going forward, swag is good, because it kind of gives a sense of community and belonging to a company when somebody wears that swag. And I know that one of my companies does like Swag Wednesdays. So whenever they have their like town hall, they do it on a Wednesday. And so whenever they have their town hall, everybody wears swag from the company on that day. So, you see them with their coffee cups or their hat or their t-shirt, and it really kind of just gives that big sense of community when you see this. And I think that's really important when people are starting a new company during this remote period. The next slide I'm going to show you is another Instagram post. This is from a company in town, Ovic, if you guys have heard of them before or not. But I really love this slide because of 2 reasons. First of all, gone are the days of name tags, because People aren't walking by your desk and they're going to see that you work in the marketing department or anything, because we don't have that. We're all virtual right now. So I like this because it's basically stating like, we're celebrating the milestones, and they're saying like, come and join this journey with us through this company, and be a part of our team. And it's really welcoming for a new employee to feel that when they come on board, especially if they're coming on board and everybody else in this company knows each other because they've worked together for months or years before this person has started, but they've done it inside the office, and now it's remote, so it's even more important. I also really love the fact that Avik on this slide talks about their Avik buddy and the fire marshals, which are the blocks that they get when they become a certain thing from this Lego program. But it's kind of like the visibility buddy I was talking about before, but it's great because when you hire somebody, that new hire gets buddied up with somebody that works with the company. And these people are obviously volunteering to become buddies. And so they kind of have that security system to kind of give them an orientation around the company for the first couple of weeks. So, you're starting with a new company and you're not in an office building where you could just walk up to somebody and say, hey, how do I do this? Or how is this done? Or who do I need to talk to about doing this, right? It's a lot harder now. When you're remote, you don't necessarily want to bug people, right? But if you have this buddy, the whole purpose of having this buddy is to say, hey, can you help me figure this out? Or can you tell me who I need to talk to? And it kind of gives them that, obviously it gives them that buddy, but it kind of gives them that sense of company belonging right away because they have this person. So I really like this post because of these the two elements that they do when they onboard an employee. So the next thing I'm gonna just briefly discuss, and is the remembering the mental health and the wellness of your employees. Once again, when you are in lockdown, it's a very different state than being remote working. And so I think that employers need to remember that and understand that when your employees are working remote. And then we'll touch base on the personal connections to employees that still needs to be present at this time. So the first slide here on this section is obviously Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I won't touch on this too much because once again, there's a really good AMA talk already from May the 19th that are in the Tech Talks archives that you should go back and watch. It's done with, I believe, Nancy Buck, Susan Hyatt, Dave Litweller, and myself did this a couple of weeks ago. And so it really goes in depth of what your employees are feeling and what you need to address when it comes to their emotional state and their well-being during work. So definitely go and take a look at that. It's because it's really important to just take a moment every once in a while and just say to somebody like, how are you doing? Like, how is it in your household? Or, like, what is the situation in your household? Like, are you caring for a parent? Or do you have, 2 or 3 children that are at home right now while you're trying to work? Or, are you living in a basement apartment and you're dying to get out? Like, there's so many different elements and situations that people are in right now that it just takes a few minutes for someone to ask that that important how are you question. So go ahead and take a look at that talk on the 19th. The second thing that I wanted to mention is the mental health and the wellness of your employees is, don't forget to remember the good times and to celebrate the good times, because like we talked about in the slide before, you really need to ask that question of how is everything going and making sure they're okay. You also have to remember that there are some good things that are happening in those people's lives on a day-to-day basis, and you need to celebrate those. But you're not going to be able to, have cupcakes or cake at the office anymore. But it's really, important now so ever that, you remember their birthdays, and you remember, like we just had a coworker yesterday have a baby. So, remember that, wonderful things are still happening during a pandemic, but there are also things that are happening while you have remote workers, but you just don't necessarily know about them unless you take the time to know about them, because you don't see them on a day-to-day basis. So goes back to like the swag portion of that I talked about earlier. Is, you know, nobody wants to get swag for their birthday, so make sure you make it meaningful to them, and so that they can you know, feel like that milestone was appreciated, right? Another thing that you could do for them, and a lot of companies are doing, are like group games that can be done online or through a second party to celebrate milestones. Say it's the the company's birthday and you've hit like 5-year milestone, right? Well, go and do something fun to keep that personal connection with your whole company. So and it's, you know, look at some of the fun times. So I mentioned before the board game night, but, you know, try to find some things that that the wellness of the employee's personal state can still be used during these celebrations. Another really good thing that I think is important with mental health and wellness of the employees during this time is giving back to the community. A lot of us right now are working in companies, and you know, you're sitting all day at your computer and you're doing your Zoom meetings, and you kind of feel disconnect to what's happening outside in your community because you're not on the front line working and you're not being able to go out into the community and help the way you did before. So a great way to do that is just to send out, you know, a text or an email and say, listen, if anybody has any ideas that how they want to give back to the community, we're here to listen and to help. I know a few people have come up with some ideas of simple things like a bottle drive. And, you know, you just tell everybody you're doing a bottle drive this Thursday. If they have any liquor bottles or anything, just put them out front of their house and send a text. And, you know, you have 2 or 3 people with cars and they drive around and they just grab them from the front doors. And then you use that money toward some type of charity that the company, you know, helps out with. And it's very small. Like it's, you know, it doesn't cost the company any money. It doesn't cost the employees any money, but the employees still feel like you're giving back to something. Another one that I know that another company did is, I'm sure you guys are all noticing all the hero signs on people's front yards from the hospitals, and all the t-shirts that they're wearing, and the hospitals have been doing this to raise money for the past couple of months. But you know what they do, they really need help with is delivery of it. So basically those are all volunteers that are going to your houses and putting those signs on your front doorsteps and dropping off all the t-shirts and everything. And so it's a great way that if your company wants to help out as well, they can be one of those volunteer drivers, and they can go around and collect them from the hospitals and drop them off to all those people in the community. So once again, it's, you know, it's not a huge thing, but it really will make a big impact, and your employees will feel like they're giving something back to the community during this time. So I don't know if anybody has any other ideas or that they've done with their companies. I know that there's been a lot of like PPE drives and like donation drives for some of the long care homes. There's a ton of them, and it doesn't necessarily take that much, but the amount of feedback that I'm getting is just it makes people feel really appreciated.
EJ, we did have one question come in through the chat, not directly related to community giving, but back to your point about mental health and well-being of employees. So yeah. Susan, she asks, one of our employees is having low efficiency due to his sleep problem. How can I help? So do you have any advice for helping employees overcome some of the challenges going through the pandemic?
Okay, so yeah, like there's a ton of stress that's happening on everybody right now due to the pandemic, right? And that wouldn't normally be happening in a normal situation. So we do need to understand that these people might need outside help. And there are a lot of, well, free, but also there's a lot of different places that they can go and talk to somebody, even if it's for 15 minutes or a half an hour, a therapist or somebody that can help them just talk through some of the problems that they're having right now. I know that if you go to the Ontario Health website, and I think even Kitchener, the region, has one as well, and there's links to therapists that you can talk to online and have sessions with, just to talk through, like, if you are having a problem sleeping at night, and it could be as simple sometimes as you just have too much on your plate, like, right? You're overwhelmed by all the changes that are happening in the company. And, maybe you're not the one that, you're only being utilized 50%, but you're one of those ones that, your job has increased so much that you just can't keep up with it, but you don't want to say anything, and it's keeping you up at night, right? Or you could be one of the employees that, you are caring for a couple of children at home, as well as, older parents, and the stress of that is affecting the way that you are sleeping. And it could be as simple as where you're living at this time, right? Like, a lot of people, are, have moved back home to live with parents, or, are living in a basement apartment, and they've been there for 3 months. It's great to live in a basement apartment or a smaller apartment, if you get to go to work every day and you get to go to the park whenever you want, but now you've been stuck in this environment for 3 months and you're kind of going a little stir crazy. So just reaching out to those employees and letting them know that you understand that they're going through these difficult times and situations, and that you're there to help them. And you might not be able to 100% get them the help, but just to know that you're there to try to do that. And maybe together, the two of you can work through finding the right channels that will get that person, the needed help that they require. I think, does that answer your question? I'm hoping it does. But yeah, mental health is a hard one when transforming from everybody's working in one environment, in one setting, in an office, to boom, now everybody is completely remote, because it takes a very dedicated person sometimes to work remote, and not everybody realizes that. There are a lot of pros and opportunities for remote work, which we're going to get into, but this is definitely a different situation that we're all under right now, and completely new landscape with that. So my question was, once again, like, what are some of the challenges your company has had to deal with remote work? Obviously, that was one of them. There's a ton of them. So if you guys have any that, you've had to deal with, that you've been able to help somebody with, and let us know so that we could help somebody else. Or, if you have a question and you don't know the answer to it, maybe we can help you. So there are a ton of opportunities and challenges that come with remote. I've just put a few here. Because we could go on forever about them, but I'm going to talk about a few of them. And like the first of them, I really work well with is productivity, because I used to say that I used to try to get to the office an hour before anybody else was there, because I was my most productive that first hour of the day. And I'm sure a lot of you feel that way too. I used to be able to get like 3 hours of work done in that first hour of the day, because I was focused and I was there, my head was down, nobody else was there, nobody knew I was there, and I got to be very productive. And I sometimes find that the myth of people going, oh, I don't like my workers to be remote because they're just going to sit there and watch Netflix while they're working, or they're going to do their laundry, or, how do I know they're going to be really productive? And I kind of say to people, how do you not know they're going to be productive? Like, if I'm at home and I don't have all of the distractions of coworkers constantly knocking on my door every 5 seconds, or something, the phone going off all the time, you can be very productive while being at home. And just even the time of day. So I do really well in the morning, and I'm really productive in the morning. And so I like to get up really early and start my day, sometimes at 5 or 6 in the morning, and get all my work done. And that's great for a remote worker, because I'm not, I'm pushed into this be at the office by 9 and leave by 5 box. And my husband, who is the complete opposite, when he was working as a developer back in the day, he would do his best work between like 11 at night and 3 in the morning, because that was his time of day that he just was really productive. And with remote work, your employees get to figure out with that schedule for themselves that they will be most productive. So I really like that one as a pro for remote working. The second thing I wanted to kind of touch with is like teams and management. which ties into trust. So basically, you need to 100% trust your employees. And because people say, well, how do I trust that they're really getting all their work done? And once again, how do you know they're not? When you hire somebody, you have to be able to trust the right decision that you've made and the right decision that they're going to make. Because if you don't trust them, you should not have hired them. And you will find pretty soon, within the first 2 or 3 weeks of having somebody go remote, if they're not going to be trustworthy, because you'll notice that they're not getting their work done, or they're not meeting their milestones. And you will find out quick enough. But if you give them the trust and the opportunity to really flourish, you'll see that the relationship that you can build with them and how much more productive they can be will come to light. Another one I wanted to quickly talk about, obviously technology right now. Being remote is so much easier than it was even 5 years ago with the type of, I'm so sorry. I thought I pressed, see there you go. Obviously I didn't have all the tools in place. I'm just going to, can you guys even see my screen still?
No, PJ, we just see you.
There you go. Sorry. Can you see it now?
Still not up.
Oh, can you see it?
I cannot on my end.
No, I
Oh,
cannot.
I'm sorry. Okay, what happened now? I stopped sharing.
Okay, so now we just don't see you on video.
Once again, the video went off?
Yeah. Is the presentation open on your computer?
Yeah, it is.
I would just hit
Right.
share screen at the bottom.
There it goes. Hold on. You're going to see me in a second. There we go.
You're back up and there's your slide.
And now,
Yep, just click present mode.
there you go. Sorry about that. See, once again, a whole new world. And here I am talking about technology and how great it is. And it is really great because I can share this from my kitchen table to talk to you guys. But not everything works as smoothly as you think that it should at all times. But yeah, we do have this technology that I can be sitting at my kitchen table and I'm talking to how many people right now. And this wouldn't have been able to happen 5 or 10 years ago with the type of technology that we have right now. So I feel that that's a great opportunity that has come to light in the past couple of years that makes remote working possible. A few other things I wanted to just kind of go over is financials. Like there's a lot of funny financial pros and cons that come with remote work. Obviously, a lot of us have these offices that are sitting empty right now all over Kitchener-Waterloo or, Canada and the world. And, it's costing us money in rent and leases that we might not be able to get out of. But pretty soon the situation will change and things will get better. And we will have lower costs for rent and space and parking like that, we can put that budget toward other things that can help promote the company and to help with remote workers and hiring people from different places. So, there's a lot of extra costs that go involved with having an actual office space that having remote workers allows us to have. And so we are going to find that a lot of employees, or a good portion of them, aren't going to be ready to go back to the office even when phase 2 and 3 open up and everything's back to normal. Like if you have an office building, and you have 200 employees and you're on the 11th floor, people aren't necessarily going to feel comfortable going back and riding an elevator or, waiting in the line so that they can get into an elevator and then come back down. So, we're going to find that the office space is going to decrease, and you might find 30% of your employees work remote all the time. And that's okay. That's actually really good because it allows us to put some of the expenses somewhere else to help out. And you'll find too that as we go back to the office, you're going to spend a lot more money on things that you weren't even considering, like cleaning fees. Because once you have, everybody in the office, or a certain amount of people in the office, and they leave, you might have only had a cleaning fee, cleaning crew come in once a week. Well, you're going to need them to come in every day now and make sure that everything is sanitized and clean for the next day. So there's going to be a lot of challenges that we're going to find heading back into the office during the next probably 12 months. So having as many people stay remote as possible could be a really good thing for your company. And I've read this blog post the other day that it's actually, some employees are loving it, because one of the things I read that an employee was super happy that they weren't spending as much money on obviously gas or transit to get to work. They were having so much less stress being in traffic. I know my brother-in-law, he lives in California, and he says he hates going into work when he has to, because he has to go into LA and it's an hour and a half of traffic, like bumper to bumper, when it's normally like a 20-minute drive. And he's like, I'm so less stressed right now because I don't have to deal with traffic. It's the silliest thing, but it just changes his whole outlook on life. Somebody else in the blog wrote that they're loving it because they're spending less money on clothes, believe it or not. I know myself, I have my work clothes and then I have my after work clothes. And so, you come home from work and you get out of your suit, or you get out of, your tie and everything, and you put on your comfy clothes for the rest of the day. Well, when you have remote working, you're not having to spend all that money on suits and dresses and everything like that, because you're remote all the time now. It's not necessarily good to be in your pajamas 24/7, although sometimes I would totally love to do that. But there are the little things that you wouldn't even think about as an opportunity to help with remote working. So, and then on the last one I kind of wanted to touch base is talent. Like with remote workers, you don't have to worry about hiring people locally. You can hire people from all over the world now, and that talent pool has completely opened up because you're not confined to, the area within a driving range to your work. So although it is harder to, hire and have the process and onboarding and, trying to figure out that connection, there's a lot more opportunities than challenges I find when it comes to talent in the workplace. So, and it's very hard sometimes when you have that talent all over to make those meaningful connections from day one. But like I talked about before, if you have the right tools in place for them to be productive, and you have the expectations set for them for what you're looking for, and then you have the right systems in place, like buddy systems and the personal touches, you can really have a meaningful connection with your employees, no matter where they are in the world. So I find that to be the most important. So that's my last slide that I have right now. I don't know if anybody came up with any challenges that they've had in the past, I guess, what are we on, like week 16 now, and moving forward, that they would like to share with the group. But I'm just going to take this off right here for a second and stop my sharing, so that if people want to ask questions.
I didn't see any new questions come into the chat, but if anyone does have any questions for PJ, across the entire presentation, feel free to put them in chat. We just have a few minutes before the session wraps up, but we're happy to get to questions if you do have them.
Quiet group, that's okay. I talk a lot, so I'm like the last child of 5, and so at the dinner table I had to talk really fast to get whatever I wanted to say in before all my brothers and sisters ahead of me would do that. So I've learned very well to get everything in pretty fast.
Yeah, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in. So thank you very much, PJ, for your time today. Thank you, everyone on the call for joining. As I mentioned, if you have further questions or you want to pick any of our growth coaches' brains on any topics related to COVID, please feel free to reach out to your Communitech CSM or advisor, and we'll make sure to connect you. And you can always check out past AMA sessions at communitech.ca if you search Tech Talks. So thanks, everyone. Thanks, PJ, and we'll see you all next week. Thanks.